So you're saying to me that it's literally since 2011 that it was reformed since 1992.
Since 1992, so
So before that, the man named was a rape on a galang. I know now.
I wouldn't necessarily put it that way.
I saw me that put it though.
You look good, you have all of the something there about you. Yes, goodie!
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Goodgal podcast, and I am here with attorney at law, friend Richard Lynch. How are you?
Not bad at all. Happy to be here.
I am so happy that you're here. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Like you're an attorney at law, how many years, what's your specialty, a little bit about you. In the microphone, of course.
Of course. Well, yes. As you introduced me, my name is Richard Lynch. This is my 8th year of practice. I predominantly do criminal law, but I'm also expanding into other areas now.
So you get the bad people back on the streets?
I get good people who are caught up in bad situations into the streets and out of prison. Yes.
Okay, wow. Spoken like a true lawyer. But we're happy to have you because, today, why I asked Richard to come on was I wanted to talk about, as you can see by the title, the hidden registry, sex offenders, and the laws in Jamaica. So in light of recent events, including the tragic case of a missing teacher whose body was found and a sexual offender detained, we want to talk about just the process of sexual assault and what kind of legal ramifications, or if there are any, and the reporting process and all of that. So I thought it was a really good conversation to have, and I know that you handle a lot of those cases. so maybe too much.
Not complaining though.
So my first question is the definitions of the different categories of sexual assault. So rape versus sexual assault, rape of a child, can you kind of explain that to us?
All right, well, there are several types of offenses covered by the Sexual Offences Act. You have rape, as you indicated. Then we have marital rape.
Marital rape,
yes.
So like a husband
can rape his wife.
Okay.
But in specified circumstances.
Okay.
And then you have grievous sexual assault. That is where there's penetration without a penis. It also includes oral sex.
Okay. Penetration without a penis. Okay.
Without a penis, meaning you can use an object or.
Oh, okay.
Or
grievous. Okay. Okay.
And then you have indecent assault as well. You have sexual touching. So you have various levels. Mm-hmm. So it depends on the circumstances that are reported.
And can more than one of those things be included in a case? So like object, then also penetration, all of that. So it can be more than one charge that's stacked on top of each other.
Yes. It depends on the circumstances. So it might be a situation where, rape, as you can appreciate, is when a man forcibly has sexual intercourse with a woman without her consent. Yeah. And in a particular set of circumstances, other things can happen along the way too, like oral sex. Okay. There's also an offense called forcibly abduction. It might be a situation where he grabbed her off the street, carried her to a private place or in a motor vehicle. It's like various circumstances. So yes, there can be multiple charges for one set of circumstances. Okay.
And how are these offenses prosecuted and the typical legal outcomes for things like this?
Well, it all has to start with a report to the police. Okay. So without a report and without a complainant, then there can't be any prosecution. Mm-hmm. So firstly, and the sooner the better, meaning the sooner the offense takes place, the better it is for you to go to the police station. If there's a long gap or a delay in it, it might affect certain things like the gathering of evidential material like semen, or if there's torn clothing, for example, that can demonstrate force. So the sooner the incident happens, the better it is for the complainant. And there are special departments of the police that treat with sexual offenses. It's called SISOCA.
Okay. I thought that was for kids.
It's not just for kids. It's also for adults too.
Oh, okay. Okay, but then I feel like there's kind of a stigma about reporting sexual offenses, right? Is it something where you can go into the police station and just say, hey, I want to report this? And, do we have proper rape kits? Do they have to go themselves to the hospital? Do the police take them? Like, what is that like?
Well, that's an excellent question. Sometimes there are challenges in terms of the complainant reliving the experience, because sometimes it can be a very traumatizing set of circumstances.
For sure.
And a lot of time, especially children, they're confused about it, and sometimes they're ashamed of talking about it again. And also sometimes there may be situations where they're covering up for someone else that they love and care for.
Mm-hmm.
So there are difficulties that way, but you have police officers at Sissoko that are specially trained to deal with children, and they have to deal with them on a daily basis. You also have victim support units that also help with those circumstances. With the issue, you mentioned an issue just now about
rape kits.
Yeah. What usually obtains is that when the report is made, before even a formal statement is recorded, they're required to be taken to the hospital for treatment. And that is when they would exercise certain steps in like obtaining DNA swabs, clothing that was that the complainant was wearing at the time of the incident, and also to take steps to prevent them from getting any infections. If it is that the offender didn't use a condom.
Well, I don't think they're thinking about that.
There are some instances.
Really?
Where condoms are actually used. Yes, I've seen it.
Wow. Okay. A responsible rapist.
I've
literally never heard that. But so in terms of, but then if, for example, right, it's also been a thing where women say that, they don't get the support when reporting these type of crimes because it's a whole process, because everything is not done in one place. So it requires the assistance of other people, right? So you have to go to the hospital, the police station. So you're saying the best place that they should go is not necessarily directly to the police station, but it's directly to Sissoko would be a better...
Sissoko is an arm of the police.
Okay.
It's a department of the police.
Oh, okay.
So it's still the police.
But they would send you there. So like, let's say I go Constant Spring. God forbid something happens to me. They're going to send me... They're going to send me there.
They would send it. They would direct you there.
Okay.
Some instances they may take a statement first, and then have you brought to Sissoko along with the statement.
Okay. Okay.
So normally, sometimes there are instances where sexual offenses aren't taken as seriously as they ought to be.
I feel like there's more times than not.
More what?
I feel like that's more times than not. But you can correct me.
But police are generally encouraged not to turn away victims of sexual offenses. And that's why most of them will automatically, once you go to a police station that's not Sissoko, then they will just direct you. You're there because some of them are not trained and equipped to deal with those situations.
Okay.
Whilst the Sissoko police
are. Okay. So basically they're the SVU.
And then basically
they're the SVU of Jamaica.
Basically.
Okay. In
terms of children too. They're well equipped to deal with them, and they have a lot of support there that can assist with that, like child protection services and so on.
Okay.
So that's the right place.
So the judicial process, right? What is the judicial process? So now, okay, we spoke about what it is, reporting it. Now I can identify my attacker. I'm going through the judicial process. What is that like, right? Does it take a time? Like, for example, reporting, is it an immediate thing where it goes to court? Like, what's that whole process like of after the offender is caught, all of that?
All right, so there are different stages to it, as I was explaining before. So it starts with a report.
Yeah.
Then after they receive a report, they're to send them to the hospital for treatment. If it's a situation where they went to the hospital first, then the doctor has a duty to report it to the police or refer them to Sissoko.
So the person themselves needs to go to the hospital to get a sample. The attacker.
No, not the attacker. We're not on the attacker. We're still on the victim.
We're still on the victim. Okay.
Meaning, if it is that they attend the hospital before going to the police, then the doctor has an ethical obligation to make a report and to refer them to the police. But so that's one stage. Now, after they finish with the doctor, then they're supposed to return to Sissoko and have a statement recorded. And then, there are critical features of the statement, such as the identification of the offender and also the situation as it unfolded is supposed to be recorded as is. Mm-hmm. And also, it would be good if they record a statement from another person who the complainant first reported it to. Mm-hmm. So then that's one stage. So after they have to gather the file and gather whatever evidential material they have. Usually after they record a statement, they go to the scene of the incident and also the home of the offender, if it is known, to try to execute an arrest as soon as possible. Okay. And then a part of gathering the evidence, as I said before, is any evidential material like DNA, swabs, sampling, taking the clothes of the offender too. If it was, for example, on a bed, that you take the sheets, anything of relevance there. Is really just to seal the case, like to corroborate it. So, and then after that, when the file is complete, they submit it to the court. It usually starts in the parish court first. Okay. And then over time, once there's sufficient basis to continue, then it is sent to the circuit court for trial.
How long does that take?
So it does take some time. Usually you're within the parish court for approximately 12 months. And then based on the court's fixtures, it may be within another 12 months, that is before the circuit court.
So 2 years.
Roughly.
But then, so where is the offender during this time?
Well, depending on the circumstances, he may be in custody during this time, or he may be a beneficiary of bail.
And so then, just a walk a road. Just attack woman and walk a road.
Well,
attack a next woman.
Well, that's under the presumption that he's guilty. Remember, we start with the presumption of innocence
until proven guilty.
Yes, he's clothed with that. Mm-hmm. So not everyone that is accused of rape is actually guilty of rape. Okay. But during the time, it's not that he's free to walk a road, as you put it. The court usually imposes reporting conditions on them so that they can be monitored.
So like take passport and them thing there, for example.
Right. So the conditions would also include him surrendering his passport, being unable to travel. So there's restrictions on his movement.
Okay. But then does he have a restraining order on the victim, like he can't go near the victim 100 feet? Are there things like that?
It depends on the circumstances. If needs be, there can be a protection order put in place. Mm. For instance, there may be a situation with a husband and wife, for example, and the wife is a victim of domestic violence and also by extension rape, and she can go to the family court to get a restraining order or an order preventing him from coming to the house. Okay. So there can be situations like that too. And it can extend to children too, especially vulnerable children, meaning those with disabilities or physical or mental disabilities.
So even the 2-year period that you explained to me a while ago with the different courts, that applies to child cases as well? Like it's the same length of time?
Or
it may vary.
It varies based on the complexity of the case. So you do have some matters where children are actually charged for sexual offenses, and they move somewhat quicker than when adults are charged for sexual offenses. Because what you're trying to get the child out of the system as soon as possible so that they can rehabilitate and contribute to society. But we still have to protect our children even if they're offenders. We have legislation that protects them, the Child Care and Protection Act.
So even if they are the offenders, they're protected because we are trying to rehabilitate offenders who are children back into society.
Yes, because you don't want it a situation where they get worse. You don't want them to stay in it too long and not be able to complete their studies, because sometimes it affects them mentally as well.
I think the victim is more affected. But okay. Let me put on my journalist hat and not be the woman I am. But no, for real, it depends. Okay.
All right, there's some offenses that children are charged for. For example, sexual intercourse with person under 16. You have the typical situation. High school boyfriend, high school girlfriend. Okay. They have sexual intercourse. the female consents to it, but by law she can't if she's under 16. And in situations like that, the law tries to strike a balance between both of them, because even though they both consensually had sex, the law is set in a way where the man gets the blame in those circumstances, which is a bit unfair, because really and truly both of them should be charged. But by the very definition of rape, it's penile penetration of the vagina. So in circumstances like that, the law tends to be a little bit more lenient to our boys.
Try and assist them when it's because we don't call it statutory rape like they do in
the States.
Yeah, with my SVU degree. But what is the name of that
offense? Sexual intercourse with a person under 16.
Oh, so it's just sexual intercourse with a person under 16.
It's different from rape, because this is an element that one, the complainant is under the age of 16. That's one. And two, many times the male may also be under 16 or under 18, so it's still, for all intents and purposes, a minor.
Okay. So what I'm learning then, it's a very complex thing, and it's a very complex system. But then the role of protection for witnesses in court proceedings, I've heard it said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that victims of rape have to testify in court against their offender. Is that true?
That is true. But there are ways that can protect certain witnesses who are vulnerable by the set of based on the situation, in the sense that there are special measures that can allow victims to give evidence by video, as opposed to coming in person and facing the offender. And it's just as if it has now been proven to be just as effective as in person.
But it's something where, why do victims have to testify? Like, if there's enough evidence, if all of that is there, why is that still a legal requirement? Or is it not? Like, because what's based on what I read is that you have to face your accuser or something like that.
Yeah, you have the right to face your accuser.
Yeah. But if everything is there for say, him do it, why do I still need to do that?
All right, let me put it this way. Sometimes there may be allegations on paper that on paper it appears very strong. But then when you hear the evidence and you see the witness present the evidence, you realize that there's not much there.
And then they have good lawyers like Richard Lynch who, who can make the case sound different. Okay, fair. I get what you're saying.
So and then sometimes having it on paper alone, it might appear very strong, but when you get the opportunity to really test it, you can see it's not so.
That's unfortunate for victims though, because I feel like I have to relive this thing, and then also I think there's a trauma element that I don't know if the court system thinks about, right? Because as you said, a video, but still you have to. I'm waiting 2 years, and then I have to relive the experience over and over and over again throughout the process of that 2 years. Okay, so now we've gotten to the courts and what's happening there. Let's talk about something that's been very popular, which is the sex offender registry. Now, explain the sex offender registry in Jamaica.
Well, so the sex offenders registry first came about after the enactment of the Sexual Offences Act in 2011. It was never there before.
2011. What?
Yes.
No, you need to backtrack to that. So the Sexual Offences Act just came around in 2011.
All right, let me explain that first. There was legislation before.
Okay.
But it needed changes. And, they've been advocated for changes to this legislation since about 1992. And then the official change came in 2009, and then it was officially enacted in 2011.
I do remember that. 2009, that was after Ananda Dean.
Yes.
So that was correct. What led to, and then now, because I think before the person had to be missing for 24 hours or something like that. But now it's no longer like that.
Right.
Okay. So that was a part of that legislation change.
But the legislation, there has been a lot of changes in that legislation. For example, mandatory minimum sentences.
Okay.
So for like most of the offenses, or life imprisonment with a minimum of 15 years. So the starting point
Love that.
is 15 years. So it's a strong deterrence, or ought to be a strong deterrence.
Okay. So you're saying to me that it's literally since 2011 that it was reformed, since 1992.
Since 1992. So,
so before that, the man named a rape on a galang. I don't know.
I wouldn't necessarily put it that way.
I saw me that put it though.
I wouldn't necessarily put it that way. What I put it as is that the government saw a problem and they took the necessary step to make the necessary changes.
Them tip too. But anyways, I digress. Okay, so now let's talk about basically the Sex Offenders Act, right, but then you were saying that the registry. So the registry started in 2011 as well?
So the legislation was officially enacted in 2011, but the Sex Offenders Registry itself was officially set up, as in physically, in 2014. So it's being managed by the Commissioner of Corrections.
Okay. A man. Just asking. But then, so hold on. Is it a thing where everybody who was accused was added to the list?
Not accused, but...
convicted was added to the list?
Convicted are added to the list.
Added to even before. So it started in 2014. Everybody convicted before 2014 would have been added to the list.
You mean prior?
Prior. Or just fully start where the list started to formulate in 2014?
Essentially, yes. And onwards.
So nobody before 2014 wouldn't be on it?
No.
It's very hard for a woman. But okay. So who has access, right? Because there are certain... Now we're in this conversation where the privacy concerns of, people on this list, which I don't understand. I'm going to stay silent because I want to understand. Why is it that you have... why is the list private, and why can't everyone access the sexual offenders registry like it is in other countries around the world?
Well, the names that are placed on the registry, sexual offences registry, are in fact private and confidential, but I think for good reason, because we have to bear in mind that even though someone is convicted of a sexual offense, they still have to meaningfully contribute to society. And it may be a situation where they're placed on the list and unable to get work or a meaningful job or schools or attend. You understand what I'm saying?
No. I'm going to be real with you, because
there's cultural differences too. Okay. It might be a situation where somebody may just easily access the list, see that this person was convicted of, say, child molestation or a child rape allegation, it's no longer allegation if they're convicted, and then they see them and attack them in the streets. It can't be fair to them. That's double punishment. So, okay. But I do believe, though, that the way the legislation is geared, it struck a relevant balance, meaning persons still can have access to it. They can apply to have access to it for a specified circumstance. For example, caregivers, if the person wants a job as a caregiver, for example, or a sex offenders counselor may want access to the list. The members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force may want access to the list. So in specified circumstances, the relevant parties can have access to it.
So you're saying based on our nature...
On patient care facilities, persons in charge of patient care facilities can also have access to this. Okay. Because you don't want a situation where you have a person was convicted of a sexual offense taking care of the elderly or children.
Okay.
Or in a school, or hired at a school that caters to minors.
So you're saying that basically there is access that can be given to certain institutions, yes. But then we've heard of situations where these people get work in certain institutions. So it's on the institution to basically request access, yes. and do the proper due diligence then.
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
So there are some cases where the access can be given. We just need to so if you do have a situation where you have a business, or you can check if your business is applicable to receive access to that information based on the nature.
Yes.
Okay.
And near relatives or near associates of the person can apply to have access to the list to confirm if the name is on it as well.
What about churches?
Yes, absolutely.
The churches would have access.
Yes,
okay.
they can.
Okay.
But they just have to show what the association to the person is.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say is a person who's applying to be a member of the church. I know some churches are strict on the membership policies. Then they can have access to it because it's a near association. But they have to apply for it. It's something that you have to actually apply for.
Apply for it.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not like you can click a button, go on Google, and the information is there.
Okay. What is so you said you do agree with the law of making it private with circumstance.
Yeah. Yes.
So you say your main concern about it being public is the fact that persons may be harmed.
That is one of them.
Yeah. But do you think it's fair then?
It can be, and also it can lead to reputational damage as well.
Do you not think that's deserving though? Like because you gave this person trauma, right? Like I'm talking for the guilty here or the convicted. You gave this person trauma, you've affected their life. So do you not think that you should be affected by your actions?
Well, my view is though, it is not in every situation that someone is convicted that they really were guilty. Innocent people go to prison all the time, unfortunately. So you don't want it to be a situation where someone is still maintaining their innocence and they in fact were innocent despite being convicted, and they have to suffer again by having their name publicly listed on a registry. Okay.
But then what about the guilty? Take out the innocent outside now. What about the people who are guilty? Do you not think they should suffer throughout their life, seeing as the victim now has permanent trauma? Or you think they should just serve this? They've served their time. They've done what they need to do. They need to get back into society.
I'm more leaning towards the latter statement.
Before get back into society.
Yes.
Okay.
It makes the process easier for them.
Okay.
Because, for example, you have countries you have other jurisdictions that the sex offenders registry is publicly available. No.
Caribbean countries as well?
Yes, Caribbean countries. I know in particular, specifically Trinidad and Tobago.
Theirs is public.
The list is public. But this is based on my experience. I've came across people who convicted overseas. They return to Jamaica after some time and they're explaining what they went through. So, for example, there's this particular individual who was convicted overseas for a sexual offense, and his name was on the sex offenders registry there. He could not get a proper job. Every community he moved to, it was disclosed to members of the public that, hey, this person was convicted of a sexual offense. Whenever something went wrong in the community, meaning like a child came home too late or was not found or missing or somebody got raped, there was a break-in with a rape, anything that happened, the first person they come knocking to within 24 hours is his house. Even if it was, and then you have to do a lot to show alibi and all of those things. So it's like even though they were found guilty, it's like they're punished again.
Ladies, comment, because I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm listening to you and I'm like, I don't hear anything bad in that. Because if you have the propensity to do that, make a first come to you.
So you don't think that a particular individual in those circumstances can be forgiven?
No.
A second chance?
No. I am big on forgiveness, right? And vengeance is the Lord's, right?
Vengeance is the Lord's.
I believe in that. However, let us not act like there's not consequences to your actions.
Yes.
You did the action, so this is a part of the consequence.
And if it's a situation where you already served a long prison sentence.
Yeah, but the prison sentence is the land's consequence. You get what I'm saying? The prison sentence is for the system that we have set up, right? But the consequence of your actions remains with you throughout your life. So you're saying
he deserves to be ostracized for the rest of his life?
I think people have a right. I think community members and people have a right to be cautious of said person. And if should something happen, they have the right to question this person, because I don't think sexual assault is something that you just, hey, I did it once and then I'm not going to do it again. You have the propensity and the possibility to do it again. So it's almost like it also keeps you accountable as the offender to,
well, I appreciate your point.
Yeah, I do not appreciate yours. A joke.
That's okay.
But okay.
But the reality is though, as I say, it's a balancing act. They don't stay on the list for the rest of their entire lives.
So hold on, what do you mean? Past fair cause. What do you mean they don't stay on the list for them? No, what do you mean by they don't stay on the list? So when you get accused, you can come off of the registry?
After a period of time.
What period of time?
The legislation says 10 years, but you can apply to the court for that. And the court doesn't necessarily have to accept your application. They can actually extend it for a further 10 years, depending on the circumstances.
So it's not a permanent stint?
It's not a permanent stint, no.
So if you come off like 10 years ago, and me go run your police record,
the police record will show that the person was convicted of rape.
Yeah.
But the sexual offences registry, it will be removed. But that's only after application by the party. Okay. By the offender who was convicted. Okay. So if it doesn't apply, then it stays.
Okay.
And then during this period is like a post-conviction monitoring of the offender. So it's a way for the government to kind of keep them in check. So they have to report there within required times, and they also have to notify them whenever they change their address.
Okay.
And notify them whenever they have an intention to travel, for example.
Great.
Yeah. So they're monitored.
They're monitored. Okay. So once you're convicted of one of the offenses on the Sexual Offences Act, you are then added to the registry. Is it automatic, or does everybody get added, or is there certain circumstances for that?
That's an excellent question, because there are circumstances where, depending on the nature of the offense and the offender, where the court can order that they're exempt from the list. So usually that would apply to children. Remember we spoke about minors being convicted of offenses or charged for offenses?
Yeah.
The court usually exercises that leniency in favor of them.
Okay.
Of minors, and also in circumstances where the penalty is not as severe. So, because you do have situations where the sentence may not be a prison term. Mm-hmm. It might be a suspended sentence. And in those circumstances, you can ask the court not to record their names on the sex registry.
Repeat that, just so I'm clear.
What I'm saying is that it depends on the severity.
The severity
of the offense.
Yeah.
And also the penalty. So, for example, you may have an offense. Let's say it is sexual touching.
Okay.
And when the court takes into consideration everything, like the circumstances of the offense, the circumstances of the offender, and they said, okay, you're not deserving of a prison sentence. What I'll do, I'll give you a suspended sentence. So you can go on the road, but if you commit the offense, you have to serve the time of the suspended sentence.
Okay.
Now, in those circumstances, the court can use its discretion and not have them added to the registry. But it would not be the same in circumstances where an individual is charged and convicted for rape. The statutory minimum is 15 years. Mm-hmm. There's no discretion to be added there. Mm-hmm. You understand?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's just depending on the level.
It depends on the level.
Okay. I can see that. But my concern with it is that it's everything based on what I'm hearing about the registry. It's at the discretion of the court.
The discretion is sparingly exercised.
Yeah.
Sparingly exercised.
Because it's just, because for example, right, even what you said earlier, like taxi companies. So basically the companies need to be applying then for the registry and running it against the people that they hire.
Yes, that would actually
be
a good step to take for the companies.
So taxi companies can, on time, all of y'all, Martech, y'all can apply,
and that can protect the company as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so public awareness, right, and the implications. We spoke about that a little bit, but do you think, so you're saying that you think it's more harm to have it out there based on the nature of our society?
Yeah, there's cultural differences.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
cultural difference because I mean, we're all Jamaicans. We never support rape under any circumstances. And I'm sure you're familiar with the term jungle justice. You don't want it to be a situation where somebody is fingered as a child molester and then everybody comes down on them harshly. So I think with the way our culture is, I think it would be the more harm than good to have it readily accessible to the public.
Okay. Okay.
But that's why I said it's a perfect balancing scheme where specific parties or a set number of parties can have access to that information.
I agree to disagree. You have the law degree. I have a mouthpiece. So let's talk about the laws, right? Do you think that there are some laws that need to be updated or introduced to better protect the victims and, prosecute offenders based on the Sexual Offences Act and how the whole process goes that you've explained? Do you think there's some legislation that needs to be updated?
Well, with some of you see, with this legislation, I believe they tried to make it very gender neutral, but there's some offenses that should also take into account the actions of the females. For example, just like I explained to you earlier, sexual intercourse with a person under 16, they both should be charged if it's consensual. And the same goes for even the very definition of rape, because there's a school of thought that suggests that men can be raped too, and women ought to be charged in those circumstances. So there can be legislative changes in that regard.
I do agree with that because I think when...
Finally, we agree on that.
I do agree with that because I do think there's a lot of young boys who have been molested by older women, but they speak about it like it's their first sexual experience. Like they speak about it like it's a normal sexual experience. Most men I know, when they talk about losing their virginity, is always some older woman and they were like 12, and I'm like, everyone laughs about it, but I'm like, you're actually a victim because that shouldn't be your experience. But as you said, there's more things advocating for women and not men in that regard. So I do agree with one thing. So I'm ending with a personal question. Based on the laws and legislations in Jamaica, would you feel that your daughter is safe in Jamaica? Be honest.
Well, the truth is, we have a very aggressive culture, and we all live in a hypersexual environment. You can hear through the music, what you see on social media, what is exposed to us. So, to answer your question, not necessarily. But what I can say is that there's adequate laws in place to protect post-rape. If there's a situation, then there's ways and means to treat with it. But on an everyday basis, not necessarily.
Okay. I don't know. From a woman's perspective, I don't think... I'll jump in here. I don't think I feel 100% safe in Jamaica. I think that I also live in a bubble of privilege where I drive a car. I've never had to take the bus. I've never had to do any of that. So I feel like also too, women who have to take the bus every day, public transport, who have to walk on the road, like
higher risk.
It's a higher risk. I also think that depending on, there's certain jobs that is just exposes you more to a lot of men and all of that. Like if you're a bartender or something like that, So I think that, and then the whole process that you've explained, I mean, I don't know if I think I learned a lot, but I think the comforts in terms of a 2-year wait, all of those things.
Litigation does take some time.
It takes some time. So it's almost like, and then you don't know where your offender will be. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like one of those things where I wouldn't say that.
But there are other protections there in terms of, knowing where the offender will be. For example, if the incident took place where you and the offender live in the same community, then a part of the conditions may require him to relocate.
And that may is too heavy for me.
It's more likely than not.
Yeah. But still, it's just like there's a possibility of not. You know what I mean? So I get it. And I think I learned a lot in terms of we do have it in place. But the fact also is that because it was reformed in 2011, we still have a ways to go because it's still from a legal standpoint, it's still a new act, right? Or relatively new. So I think we do have a ways to go. I think that
we're making positive strides.
We're making, I won't say no, we are making positive strides. Do I think it needs to happen quicker? Yes. But I do appreciate, that we do have it in place at least. So okay, but I thank you so much for being a part of the Goodgal podcast and all the research and sharing your expertise. So
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Bye.